Hello again, Stumplings. It's good to see you all, and it has been a while. We haven't shared any encounters here at Bigfoot Lake for seems like quite a long time, but we have two pretty spectacular Bigfoot encounters to share tonight, so I hope you enjoy these. We hope you've had a wonderful Christmas. Hopefully you had some time with family and friends, and just a joyous time. And we wish you the best for a great 2024. I wish you a great new year. So yeah, tonight we have two Bigfoot encounters to share. So as always, pull up your favorite stump and pull it up close to the campfire as we dive into tonight's two Bigfoot encounters. Now our first encounter is from a member of the First Nations, and this gentleman has had more than one encounter. So this is he's referring to this being his second encounter. So that's the story that we're going to start with. And it is quite an amazing encounter. And his encounter is describing a Gugwe, Gugwe, which is face eater. Alright, so here we go. He says, I am a First Nations man and was 36 or 37 years old at the time of this encounter. I've hunted all my life since I was a child. I never handled guns when I was that young, mind you, but my family always took me out with them. I started going out on my own at about 14 to 15 years old. On to the encounter. I parked my truck at the gravel pit and started walking the game trail to the lake that is about 1.5 to 2 kilometers away from the pit. Remember that I've had an encounter in this exact spot a year prior. By this time, a year has passed, and I've convinced myself that what I saw couldn't have possibly been real. I started out and came to the spot where I saw the grinning Sabe. So he's talking about his first encounter with a grinning Sabe. When I get to the spot, the big pile of trees is gone. Just gone, with no signs of any leftover trees from the year before. I look around the area for signs of the felled trees, and there is nothing. So strange. I shrug it off, thinking there has to be a logical explanation. Anyway, I start hiking again, and I hear a moose off in the distance. I get my rifle out and go around a bend on the trail, and as luck would have it, the young bull is within shooting distance. I load my rifle and I take a knee. I start breathing slowly for a good shot. I take aim and snap! A tree is broken directly behind me. Immediately I go into defense mode. I whirl around, pointing my gun, expecting to see another moose or maybe a bear. But what I see standing there is no bear or moose. It's this god-awful, hideous humanoid. It is staring right at my gun. Its eyes are darting back and forth from my gun to my eyes. Those eyes, so nightmarish and huge, black eyes, no whites. This thing, upon seeing it, the very first thought that popped into my head was, OMG, it's a demon. I'm effing dead. I look at its blackish gray face, and it's got these super deep wrinkles in its forehead. What I immediately notice is the placement of its eyes. One is lower on its face than the other eye, about an inch or so out of place, like almost on top of its cheekbone. The head is not sloped or domed, it's like ours, only larger. Its upper lip curled up, revealing those damned shark teeth I saw with the last one. Yellow stained teeth like triangles. Some are chipped and broken, but not many, but noticeable. So there it is, standing there about 5 feet away from me. This thing is giving off a death vibe, 100% predator. I start weighing my options on a shot placement. I look at the rest of its body, and it's covered in long, wispy hair, maybe 4 to 6 inches long. It's obviously hair and not fur, as it is clearly blowing with the wind. This creature isn't much taller than I am, and I stand about 6 feet tall. Now, the muscles on this thing, nothing short of a bodybuilder on roids. It would put a bodybuilder to shame. I think if it comes to it, I'll have to aim for the eyes. That's the other weird thing. This thing approached me from downwind. To me, that shows intelligence. Upon looking at the body, I noticed that it has patches of missing hair on its chest area. Now, for the skeptics out there, this absolutely could not have been a misidentification on my part. I've seen bears with mange over my lifetime of hunting. 100% not a bear. I say that because this damn thing has hands. Yes, hands, with opposable thumbs. I clearly saw its hands because it put up its outstretched hand like a human would do to indicate stop or don't shoot. On its other hand, which is at its side, is where I see long, black, cracked fingernails. Those, well, they look just like human fingernails, only sharper and longer. Underneath the missing hair is a gray skin that looks like something rubbed it off after repeating a task many times. I look down at its feet, and yes, it has feet, not paws. By this time, I've started talking Cree language to it. I'm telling it, look, I know you can hurt me, and I can hurt you. This is not what I want. I caught you trying to sneak up on me. I only want to leave. It never answered me. Rather, it leaned back with its long arm and caught itself. Both feet were planted, and the other arm was supporting its weight on the ground. All the while, holding its outstretched hand in the stop or don't shoot motion. Upon seeing this, I started to slowly lower my rifle. When I lowered my rifle, it too uncurled its lip, in conjunction with me lowering the gun. I thought, this is my chance. I want to leave peacefully with none of us getting hurt. At this point, I notice it is clearly looking past me, behind me. So I moved slowly and leaned the 30-06 semi-auto up against a small tree. I closed my eyes and turned around, putting myself at this thing's mercy. I count to 5 in my head. All I hear at this point in time is this thing taking off, breaking small trees and stuff, and so very fast, so fast. I got the heck out of there. I used to be a solo hunter and trekked for kilometers at a time. I even hunted at night, as I'm on a reserve for First Nations. Hunting was my greatest passion, but after all this, I cannot hunt anymore, especially at night. I will still go out in the daytime, but now all I think about are these encounters. It's taken the joy of hunting away, knowing these things are out there, and I have to keep my head on a swivel. I refuse to go back to that area. I mean, 3 strikes and you're out, you know? This has changed my worldview fundamentally. What else is out there? I would be willing to undergo hypnosis, take a lie detector test, anything. Why? To advance our understanding and knowledge of these things. I put the story out for educational purposes and to provide warning. These things are out there, and they don't look friendly. Interestingly enough, my reservation is directly adjacent to a provincial park. Coincidence or not, I don't know. So that's the conclusion of our first encounter, and boy, the details that this gentleman gave of this creature, this beast, very likely a Bigfoot, are phenomenal. Phenomenal, down to the fingernails. Let me know what you think of that one. I personally loved all the detail in that encounter. Okay, let's dive right into our second encounter of the night. The encounter starts. I am 45, but this happened when I was 15 back in 1993. We had just moved to an area called Wekiva Springs, and our house was built brand new and was on the edge of a state park, Wekiva Springs State Park. It was still wild enough at that time that we could only take the trash out 30 minutes before the truck came due to the black bears that still ventured into the neighborhood. Deer population off the charts, and to this day you will see dozens throughout the day randomly in the neighborhood. Wild turkey, wild pig, bobcats, you name it. Our home sat perfectly on the one lake in the area, and as I said, just months prior, the lot was just woods. At that time, we did not have any neighbors or houses to our left or right, although the front of the neighborhood has been built out 20 years prior. At that time, I had heard of Bigfoot, but by no means was it a daily thought or even in my interest. When I would get home from school, I would walk back into those woods, maybe 1,000 yards, and explore. And one day I noticed a spot to plant a pot plant. I had just gotten into smoking a joint here and there and had the bright idea of trying to grow my own plant. I became very familiar with the square mile around my home and grew quite comfortable venturing out there, sometimes returning at dusk. One day while going to check on my failed project of growing a plant, I saw my younger brother, who was 11, exiting the patio door about 50 yards behind me. I wasn't entering the woods yet, but saw that he was trying to sneak and follow me back there. I decided to play along and acted like I didn't know he was following me. As I was walking, I would hear him occasionally behind me, and I would stop suddenly, just to make sure. As I got deeper into the woods, I noticed it was much calmer than normal. Keep in mind, I had been going back there 5 times a week for a couple of months at this point. There was not much else to do. I didn't see any deer nor squirrels, and in hindsight, there weren't even any birds. I remember this well because I could hear my brother surprisingly well, almost too much so. I thought it would be funny if I turned the prank around on him and hide behind a tree and jump out and scare him when he passed by. It had been about 5 minutes of walking back, and we were deep enough in to really scare him. I found my tree and stopped all movement and waited. I figure he was only about 45 seconds or so behind me. And as I waited, I realized now there was no sound, almost as if I had put earplugs in. But this meant nothing to me at the time, other than just an observation. I heard my brother getting close and didn't realize how loud he was. He must be only 20 feet back, around the turn. Any second, I will see him. Except I never did. The footsteps suddenly stopped. And now I was in the weird position of just sitting there behind the tree, waiting. 2 minutes passed, and now I was getting curious. What the hell happened to him? Or did he just realize what I was doing, and now he was going to try to scare me? I finally decided to take a look. I went around the corner and could see back a good ways. I saw nothing, which was impossible, because I had heard him following me the whole time and didn't hear anything after I got behind the tree, which meant he literally disappeared. The woods were now suddenly creepy, and I got very anxious feeling. The first time ever that day. My head said to head home now, but for some reason I couldn't seem to get my bearings. I literally was lost. I calmed down and figured out the way back on the trail, even though I never left the trail. It was like my equilibrium was off. At this point, my younger brother was nowhere to be seen, and I was genuinely concerned considering he was just feet behind me a few minutes prior. I was yelling his name and started jogging backwards towards the direction of my home. After a couple of minutes, I finally heard his voice. He was hiding under some palmetto leaves that he had laid across his body, off the side of the trail, just laying there on the ground and hiding. I didn't know what to think, but I said, "Get up right now," and still have the weird feeling that I've had for the last 5 minutes. He got up and I asked him what was happening, what was going on, and he just said, "Please, just run. Run to the house with me." I didn't ask questions and ran back with him. Once we got to the backyard, he said that he had been following me, when all of a sudden he smelled something horrible and looked to his left and said he saw a big black hairy creature thing. Me, being a little paranoid because I was illegally growing a pot plant, said, "What was it, a cop? What do you mean?" He repeated that it was a big person with hair all over them, and it scared him so badly that he just fell to the ground and rolled into the palmetto bushes and just sat there frozen until I found him. At that moment, we heard a loud bang, 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 and a weird scream from the woods behind us. We both looked, and sure enough, hanging from a tree about 50 yards behind us and swinging from a large branch was the thing he was talking about. If I didn't know better, it looked like a human being mimicking a large monkey, swinging from a branch. Just made no sense. It was completely out of place. Clear as day, this was a large, burly thing that looked more like a person than anything else. We both sat there not knowing what to do, and the thing swung off the branch into the woods and was out of sight, but was hollering the whole time. We immediately ran all the way to the house, yelling for Mom and Dad to tell them what we saw. At first we got the whole, "Oh, it was just a bear, it was a bear," but eventually I think they realized we were serious, and the next day my dad was able to find a report that in Florida there were encounters with something called a skunk ape. Over the next 5 years, I would continue to have run-ins with this thing, and 2 times we had a deer leg and a deer skull put in our backyard. Once I had turkey feathers put on my windowsill. I didn't know anything about what that meant, and only later as I researched the subject did I learn about that. Every 6 months or so, the park rangers would have to come to our house and put a barrel in our yard with donuts or sweets to capture the black bears that were too comfortable coming to the neighborhood. After seeing the same ranger for the 3rd time, I felt comfortable enough to ask him what he did with the bears once he got them. He said just that they moved them to deeper parts of the park or altogether relocate them in extreme cases. And then said, "But that's not what you need to worry about." I asked him what he meant, and he said there were things bigger and badder than bears out in those woods, and to always be careful. I remember that to this day, and kind of understood what he meant after having that experience and knowing that there was indeed something else out in those woods behind my home. Today, my parents still live in that same home, and I go visit from time to time. My dad, being retired, has nothing but time and has actually grown to be a believer himself. And over the years has a few experiences of his own, including orbs. The house is about 15 minutes from downtown Orlando, but in an area that is surprisingly untouched by humans. As I said, it's a protected state park, and the home is right on the edge of where the park begins. I think when the home was built, we disturbed probably where this thing was staying or its general area. And then more homes were built, and it got pushed further back. But at that time was still coming in fairly close. It's not a crazy, insane encounter or dangerous or thrilling, but nonetheless it was real. I saw with my own eyes and then had follow-up experiences. So now I'm just trying to learn all about these things. Like, for example, was a skunk ape different than the standard Bigfoot? Is it the same? I don't know, but looking forward to going down the rabbit hole to find out. And that's the conclusion of our second encounter. I found that encounter very fascinating. Have you heard encounters and stories of these creatures being in trees, swinging from the branches? And then also he mentioned the deer leg and the deer skull being placed in their backyard and the feathers in his windowsill. That sure sounds like gifting to me. What do you guys think about that? Are you familiar with stories on gifting? And probably my favorite part of the entire story, the encounter, was the words of that park ranger. That's not what you need to worry about, referring to the bears. He said there were things bigger and badder than bears out in those woods. I think that carries a lot of weight. So let me know what you guys think of these encounters. I personally loved both of them. And yeah, I would appreciate your thoughts. If you enjoyed tonight's encounters, consider hitting that thumbs up for us. It helps us a lot in the YouTube algorithm. And also leave a comment. The comments also help the channel a lot. So appreciate you guys all sitting around the campfire on your favorite stump tonight with us. And hope you guys have a blessed 2024 moving forward. See you on the next one.